of points. Starting with I mean, one should avoid the trap or the easy slope of portraying the situations in Syria in sectarian terms. There is no doubt or dispute that the regime has used sectarianism historically and is a regime which bases itself primarily on people belonging to the sect of the Assad family, the Alawites, who are overwhelming in the regime, represent overwhelming in the regime, completely overwhelming in the elite armed forces, and have become even overwhelming in the economy. But at the same time, of course, the Alawites are in Syria 10% of the population. And if the regime had only 10% of the population on its side, it would have disappeared a long time ago. So there are, first of all, other minorities, but there are also a huge number of Sunnis on the side of the regime for various reasons. So the regime has a base of its own. It's not only Alawite regime, and on the other hand, of course, there are Alawites in the opposition. And sometimes they are repressed much more violently because they are seen as traitors by the regime with a sectarian mentality. Second point, I don't think we need to embellish other sides when we are dealing with the ugliness of what is happening today in the region. A core reason of what is happening is in the Ba'athist dictatorship in both Iraq and Syria. Both of them have been completely murderers. And for a while, the regime was actually the lesser murderer, because the Iraqi regime was much more brutal and have indeed killed huge numbers of people, either through eliminations and all that, not to mention the chemical weapons. Before Damascus, Baghdad used the chemical weapons against the Kurds and Halabja and other people, and in the war with Iran. So we have to take all that into consideration. And also I know this is, I even wrote an article a few weeks ago in one Arab newspaper, warning against any illusion about Turkey when Turkey intervened in northern Syria recently. Turkey has its own designs in Syria. It is intervening in ways which are actually quite similar to those of Iran, bringing with it Turkmen militias with a view to controlling areas in the long run. And Turkey recently actually made a deal with Bashar al-Assad, with Russia at least. And you see how the onslaught on Aleppo went without any meaningful Turkish reaction. Basically, Erdogan has sold because he fell himself in trouble after the coup and all that. He basically cut a deal with Putin. He's interested in seizing part of Syria, fighting the Kurds. That's his obsession, and definitely not for him. Assad is a minor consideration compared to the Kurds, because the Kurds are the enemy within. They are in Turkey. They are actually the vast majority of the Kurds of Kurdistan is in Turkey. And the same will be in Iraq. Don't have any illusions. Turkey will seize any pretext to intervene in northern Iraq to establish its own bridgehead and control. The Turkish state is a state which is not less than Iran, an expansionist power in the region. And we are seeing in some way, yes, a kind of a new partition. This time it's not British and French, but Turkish and Iranian in the region. Cockburn has been saying that there are no moderates in the Syrian opposition and only jihadists for a very long time. So he is repeating himself if he's written that about Aleppo. That has been his line for a very long time, with the conclusion we should do business with Bashar al-Assad. He wrote it very clearly. He is in favor of working with Bashar al-Assad. And this attitude is a criminal attitude. It's a completely reactionary attitude. And anyone believing that this has anything to do with any left-wing values is deeply, deeply wrong. And I should say that the spectacle that the left in this country, or big sections of the left in this country, have presented is a very sorry one, to the point actually that it had become a repellent for, especially among the Syrians. I mean, who believe that the left hates the Syrian people, the Syrian revolution. That's terrible. We can come back if you want to the discussion about stop the war and all that, but the recent statements and all that represent such a regression in internationalism from the tradition that existed. If you think of this country at the time of the Spanish Civil War, when the left-wing forces were demanding weapons for the Republicans, and against the the lapsus is very justified. I was going to say the German-Italian bombing of Spain. I mean, you had German-Italian bombing of vast areas of Spain to the side of Franco. Okay, now I mean, about Hillary Clinton, first of all, I didn't understand what you mean by surprising combination of neocon and neoliberalism, yes, because they fit together perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah. But she's not a neocon. Neocon is something else. Neocon are the people who are in favor of regime change. Neocon are harshly against for instance, the nuclear deal with Iran and all that. She is not that different from Barack Obama, except on the issue, they had the disagreement on the issue on Syria. And I should say that even from the point of view of the US empire, but even from the point of view of we have to preserve the regime and get some peace compromise there, she and those who said, well, for that you need to change the balance of forces, they were right. They were right, and Obama was completely wrong. And the result is, Syria is the largest stain on his legacy. It's a disaster, and he bears a huge responsibility of that. He is complicit in a crime against humanity in Syria by refusing to let the Syrian opposition get this defensive means that it needed to prevent the massacre and the destruction. Now, what will happen in the future? I mean, first of all, it's not, well, unfortunately, if you want, but majorities are never sure to win, except if you're thinking of a very long run, but in the long run, as someone said, we are all dead. No, the Syrian regime you don't have a fight, as I said, between 10% or even 40% and 60%. You have a fight between a regime which has air force and is backed by Iran and by Russia against an opposition which is funded and partially armed by the Gulf and Turkey, but the imbalance is obvious. So in this context, to believe that the opposition will overthrow the regime, I don't think this is in the cards in the present condition, unless you have a very sharp turn, or unless Tehran and Moscow change their mind or whatever. But this is again not something foreseeable now. So the issue is whether you have a peace or not. If you have a peace, a compromise, this would be a compromise between a reactionary regime and an opposition which is dominated by reactionary forces. I mean, I am certainly someone who makes a very sharp distinction between Islam as a religion and Islamic fundamentalism, but it is a fact that the key armed forces in the Syrian opposition are fundamentalists. We're not speaking only of Nusra, now Fatah al-Sham, but even Ahrar al-Sham, even etc. We can quote a number of names, Jaish al-Islam, etc. There are forces with an Islamic fundamentalist perspective. And I explained why we got into this situation, which is not the, let's say, natural inclination of the Syrians. And it's known that many people joined these groups because they had money and grew their beards because these groups had money, but otherwise they would be more shaven than I am. They didn't have, they were not religious or whatever. So the point is that, of course, no compromise will be the kind of revolutionary victory or whatever. A compromise is, however, first of all, something which is urgent for humanitarian reasons. If there are to remain any Syrians and any building in Syria. And secondly, it is indispensable for the war to stop in order for a political process to resume. The potential for this progressive political process, democratic political process is still there. We've seen it even when there was a ceasefire and the resumption of some mass demonstrations and activities. The experience of local organization and all that acquired during the uprising and the war is still there, but for this to be able to develop again and build a future for Syria of the kind that most of us would wish for Syria, you need the war to stop.
I've seen a flourish of hands up.